what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Non-Gamers React, where I introduce non-gamers in the music industry or not to video game music. Today I have a former TA, can you believe that? Former TA of theory and friend and composer extraordinaire and teacher and administrative lead and music chair and all sorts of incredible things, Jennifer Jolley. The best name ever.
My parents did well, and thank you so much, Marco. I am so thrilled to be on your show and also to see you. It's been a minute.
You've been supporting me on Patreon for the entire time.
I feel like to me, I'm just like, this is a no-brainer. Of course I'm supporting you on Patreon. Of course I am.
And you can support me at patreon.com. Just kidding. I'm really bad at plugging. Tell everybody the 90-second version of you.
So I'm Jen Jolley. I'm from Los Angeles, California. I'm a Dodger fan, and I've been doing music.
Gotta let them know.
Most of my life, my whole life, since I was 6 years old, starting playing piano because I was fascinated with the instrument, and also my mom's Korean. So there you go. I ended up, I was really into film scores growing up, and I wanted to write music for film. So I got my initial degree at the University of Southern California, decided to go into concert music. I've been writing a lot of stuff for all sorts of different types of concert music, but a lot of wind ensemble or band, but also stuff for voice. Ever since I was probably an undergrad, I wanted to write an opera. So that's a crazy endeavor. I've made a couple of attempts. I wrote some very miniature operas before, one about Paula Deen, one about the housing bubble. And I'm in the middle of writing
Paula Deen opera. That's right. I forgot.
The Paula Deen opera. I know. It's kind of like in a different lifetime.
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah.
I'm currently writing an opera about the first all-women spacewalk. So I'm also a little bit obsessed with all things space. And I have 2 cats, and I'm married, and I live.
We're not going to include where you live. We're going to cut that out.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for sharing that. So I actually thought you were a gamer, but that's because apparently your brothers are indie devs.
Their company is Burst to Flame. Which is an inside joke that they have from their childhood. So it's like my 2 brothers, Jason and Jeff. So if you think my name is awesome, my parents kept the alliteration. And then they have a friend, JJ, who's also a part of this team. I should probably play my brother's video games, but I'm just really bad at playing video games.
Have you listened to a lot of video game music?
Some. So once when I was teaching at Interlochen, I have lots of students who are influenced by video games. And in fact, that is an impetus as to why they want to write music, which I think is awesome. Yeah. So I know of Kingdom Hearts, that soundtrack. So when you're at Interlochen, they're like, we are going to give you a list of video game music, this ridiculous list on Spotify. I think I've listened to a tiny chunk of it. There were some cool, more orchestral things, also some 8-bit things. I really love chiptune music. But I haven't listened to full on soundtracks. Now my friend Bear McCreary's written the God of War or the
You're friends with Bear?
We went to school together.
You went to school with Bear?
I did. He still knows who I am. And his wife is a singer. So I sang in jazz choir with Rhea Yarborough. So we're friends. And last time I was out in LA, I saw her show and I saw Bear there. So
I didn't realize you were friends with Bear. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a small world.
Okay. Well, I can't play any of Bear's music for you today because
No, you can.
Stupid copyright.
That's true. That is true.
So it really sucks because I get asked for Bear's music quite a bit, and obviously Bear is a fantastic and prolific composer like yourself. But I just can't because of the copyright stuff with Sony, which really sucks.
Do you want me to talk to him? Although Sony will definitely control that. Sony will definitely say no.
You can definitely talk to him if he wants to come on my channel and share his favorite video game music with me. That'd be cool.
I'll text him.
All right, you heard it here first. We might have an episode with Bear. Anyway, that's great. We'll start with MIDI. We'll start with One Winged Angel. Have you ever heard One Winged Angel?
I've not.
This soundtrack was pretty formative in my childhood. This is Final Fantasy VII's music. Of course, there are 16 Final Fantasies. This is basically the Rite of Spring. And what was cool is that Nobuo Uematsu is a self-taught composer in Japan. And he basically heard the Rite of Spring, if I recall correctly, heard the Rite of Spring, and then basically was like, how do I create something similar to this? And he basically jigsawed the whole thing where he would start with sections, let it sit for a little while. And I'll be curious about your compositional style too, but he basically just grabbed everything, kind of put it together and connected the dots. And so this is the original One Winged Angel. What did you think right off the bat?
I found it fascinating how, if you're like a composer nerd, there's something about the Rite of Spring that's like in your system. Like you just gravitate to it. It's a piece that is over 100 years old, but still sounds cool and fresh. So this actually reminded me of other pieces that maybe have also been influenced by the Rite of Spring. So like the beginning, I'm listening to this, I was like, oh yeah, I'm trying to hear the textures. I'm trying to like using the synth sounds to kind of emulate the orchestration and the texture that you hear in Rite of Spring. But I was also reminded of the Jaws soundtrack. Again, I was obsessed with film scores when I was in high school. And I was like, oh, John Williams, he wrote Star Wars. Let's listen to Jaws. You know, it has the iconic dee-da, dee-da. But then actually listening to the score, actually listening to the film. So I didn't see Jaws until a few years ago. And then I'm like listening to for the first time. Like I've only heard the soundtrack. So I'm like listening to it for the first time. My husband, who's like an art historian into film, was like, you never see the shark. And I'm like, this is Rite of Spring. This is Rite of Spring with the diap. And that's what I'm hearing in this Final Fantasy soundtrack. But also, and this is strange, I don't know if Bernard Herrmann was listening to the Rite of Spring when he was writing Psycho. So the beginning rhythm that I heard in this excerpt, it kind of reminded me of the beginning rhythm of like the introduction of Psycho, like did that. And then also I was hearing like in this track. And so I loved that play of like listening and absorbing and trying to get that mood within the confines of the synth, right? Like that to me is cool. Like using what you have and really being creative about that, but also hearing the composer's individual style too, which I was loving too. I'm also curious about what was I hearing the choir sing?
Imperitus ira veraventi. It's the same text that they use in Carmina Burana. Estuans imperitus ira veraventi. It's the same thing. Estuans interius. It's Latin.
Okay, yeah, I figured it was Latin. And that also reminded me of another Stravinsky piece called Les Noces, The Wedding, which is around the same time, the same time, especially with the drum and the beats and stuff like that. So getting that percussiveness. In undergrad, I sang Les Noces. I was like really excited. I also missed every single entrance because you have to like count. And I was...
That's the one with the two pianos, right? And like the huge...
4 pianos.
Yeah, that's right. 4 pianos. Percussion, so lots of...
4 pianos, 4 percussion, 4 solo singers and choir.
That's right.
And you could, I think, did I sing it in... I sang it in English, although my friend Kelly O'Connor was like, let's sing it in Russian, because it just sounds darker and cool. And I think Latin gives you that same effect, plus like easier to sing, right?
Yeah.
So what I love about it is besides like having the rhythm and just like the awesomeness of like, I don't know what the scene is here. It's Final Fantasy, so it's probably epic. But it's just like, you're just going in, it's your hype song, right? Like with all these like weird textures, and we're going into this like otherworldly, like earthy, like rustic type of feel, but also with like a childlike joy of like, oh, I know what you listen to. That's really cool. And I listen to those same things too.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And just to give you I know the context of this very well. So basically this is the final fight with this guy called Sephiroth, and Sephiroth it's complicated, but he's a super soldier that then decides to, well, I'm not going to go into all the details about all the context, but essentially this is him. So you fight a version of him that's really fucked up and twisted, and it's called Bizarro Sephiroth. And then you think you win, but then actually he turns into an angel, a multi-winged angel. And this is actually the song that plays. It's like an angel of death. And so one-winged angel is actually, is his theme. But you are kind of in another world where like all of a sudden you go from like this really dark, stark image, and he's like all green with like a green chest, huge. And then all of a sudden it shifts into this, and he's like, 8-winged angel coming down with like, chest up, just no clothes, and like white hair, stark white hair. So it's interesting how the music heralds this invitation of essentially an unholy god, right? Like the invitation of an unholy deity. Also, one thing I noticed throughout this that I haven't really heard before was the how much the bass, like the trombone trombones or the lower brass kind of hang out in the back and actually double the men. I've never thought about that or heard it until right now.
Interesting. So I'm not a musicologist. I do have a doctorate, but I lose my doctorate on the daily and trying to remember things. Trombones used to represent the underworld, right? Or death, as like initially in opera. And you bring out the trombones when you're dealing with that type of character or that type of scenery. So I think that's cool. Now that you're telling me about the visual and especially like the higher woodwinds and the strings, like now I'm curious. I know like in video games, it's not necessarily synced up, but I think one thing, if you're talking about stealing from the Rite of Spring specifically, it's like these higher woodwind action and like that lighter, but like ominous texture. Normally when you think ominous, you're thinking dark, you're thinking low, but it's just this like eerie, ethereal texture that he got from Stravinsky that would probably represent an angel of death character. And I find that very fascinating.
Probably. You know what's even cooler is that he may not have thought about any of this at all. What's fun is to sit down, and this is I tell my viewers a lot that there's no right or wrong in video game, in music in general, but like it doesn't really matter what actually is the truth. I'm not saying like we should be lying, but what I'm saying is that like it's about like you and I are having a conversation. Who knows if Uematsu-san ever even thought about any of this? You know what I mean? I know he thought about it like the Rite of Spring and the jigsaw puzzle idea, but like I don't necessarily know if he thought about the brass and the strings. And I think it's an exercise in, well, what would you call it? I suppose it's just like, well, it's just the joy of just like talking about music, I guess.
Probably like, and also discovery, because I would say this is a composer. I've had other people play my music and they'll point out things that I had no idea what was happening.
Yeah.
And they're like, did you mean to do this? And I'm like, no, but that's like interesting, like kismet, like maybe something in my subconscious was picking up on that. Or maybe the composer like was like, I'm hearing a lot of low trombones here with this type of sound. And just historically speaking, in our like instrumental archetype collective, we're hearing trombones paired with that. Cause why not? It sounds awesome. So why not use that? Right. So it could be that the composer did not have those intentions, but what I love about being a composer is that when other people get to play my music, which I'm very thankful about, but it's not just about me. It's about the whole collective of the instrumentation and the choices and creating and listening to music together, because the audience is just as important. And so to me, that's awesome. Like I'm finding things, I don't know if it's true or not, or if the composer, who cares, but I'm finding my truth in this music, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Through the music.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. It's an interesting conversation. And I think like sometimes because obviously like with film and with video game music, like of course there's a context that's attached to something. And like, of course, like Jaws sounds a particular way because it has to, because it's involving a shark and the tension of the shark and whatever. Right. But like, I do think context obviously always raises up the bar, but at the same time, well, okay, let me ask you, I mean, when you heard Jaws now you had heard the music before seeing it, how did it pair up? Did it elevate the experience or was it actually a letdown? It
elevated the experience because like, it's hard to say because I didn't see the film until like 20 years after I listened to the soundtrack obsessively. So like I've had more life experience and with the soundtrack. It's kind of like seeing a movie that you saw as a child and then you're picking up on things later. Yeah. But I would say like it elevated because like I kind of got more of the composer's intention and also the director's intention of like trying to create this environment. And the thing also with film too, is that now that I'm an adult or more of an adult than I was, I realize that film music is not about the music alone. It's the whole picture, right? Same with opera. Like I used to I have friends who are like just talking about the music only. I'm like, you cannot, because opera is like a multimedia endeavor. It's like a whole tableau. So all of it in person. So I would say it just augmented it. It didn't distract me, but again, it's just my brain processing things. I will give you a funny story where like I saw The Shining the first time 10 years ago, but because it's a soundtrack from like standard classical music or like more 20th century music of like Ligeti and stuff like that, I'm seeing the first scene of The Shining, and it's beautifully shot and it's a scary movie, right? But I got like stupid excited. I'm like, that's Bartok's music for percussion strings and celesta. And my friend's like, what now? And I'm like, they're like, it's supposed to be creepy because it has some weird, like otherworldly sounds to it if you listen to it just by itself. And I'm like, but this sounds awesome. And I'm like supposed to be seeing like all these mountains, all this snow, all this desolation.
Yeah, I know. Classic.
So oops, now, you know.
But it's interesting though, too, because like sometimes there a lot of, have you seen the Studio Ghibli movies? Like any of those?
Yes.
Like, I went on a bender after seeing Totoro for the first time, which ironically made me, I cried at the Path of the Wind part when they're like, you know, doing the seeds and doing the dance of the dance of the wind. But anyway, it's interesting because I've listened to a lot of those pieces. Kiki's Delivery Service was one that I watched and listened to the music a lot before I actually saw it. And it was weird because I went on a journey with the music much earlier than watching the movie, kind of like you did. And so when I put the two things together, I was like, ooh, I know this song. You know, it's just like weird, but it's interesting because like, yes, you do need, here's the thing. I do think that the context is like vitally important to the storytelling, but I think that based on what I've seen the last couple of years, people get bogged down by the context and having them be married. And I think that that's okay. But I think that we also need to listen to music for its own sake and like strip it away and at least look at it and be like, well, what's this doing? And how does it make me feel when I listen to it? And then we put it back with the context. And then it's like a double, you know, it kind of increases the threshold.
And I agree with that too. I mean, I'm not like a integrated purist in that way because like I've also listened to music. Actually, speaking of The Rite of Spring, it's a ballet, right? And I grew up just with the recording. I think Boulez with Cleveland Orchestra or something like that because I was told he was a good conductor or something like that. And then hearing it live. But then I also remember seeing an excerpt from the Joffrey Ballet reconstructed, only an excerpt. But then it wasn't until like I actually saw a production at the Cincinnati Ballet where they made it more urban. So the dance, the spring dance of the jump, 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 jump. Sorry, as a composer, I have to do this. But that scene was on a subway. And so the dancers are like, yo, it's awesome. And so like every time I ride the subway, I occasionally think of like, this could be your rustic spring dance. But also now that when I listen to Stravinsky's ballets in orchestral context, I now think of movement because they're meant to go with movement. But at the same time, they're still like acceptable and it still survives as its own different experience when you just hear the music alone, which is fascinating to me.
True, but also
fascinating.
Well, because how often are we even going to the ballet? So the music has to live outside of the ballet. If you only heard it in a well, we also live in an interesting time because of digitization. So like, you know, I mean, most of the stuff that we're even talking about, if it wasn't for the fact that we have recordings and stuff, I mean, we wouldn't even know what the hell we're talking about.
It's very
crazy too, you know, like that's crazy to think about that. Like people can put on their favorite music and listen to it anywhere and everywhere. But like technically music exists in a vacuum. And once it's in the rafters, it's gone, you know, like that's the impermanence of music is something that I don't think we ever really think about anymore.
I agree. And I think that's why I've been thinking about it recently, just especially how we've been consuming music. So before we pressed record, I was talking about my students who are like listening to opera for the first time and their preferred way to consume opera. I hate using that word, but it works here. Is they like being at home watching the stuff online. Yeah. They did like going to an opera, but also it's just the convenience and therefore they're able to experience more things. Right. But also live performance is still different. I was thinking about this when I guess Megan Thee Stallion is now playing Ziegler on Moulin Rouge. And on her first night, she decided to do like a 5-minute medley of her own tunes, which I thought was awesome. And the audience dug it. And one person's like, I don't get it. It's not following the storyline. And then historically speaking, again, not a musicologist. I was like, well, that's like your Suitcase aria. When you didn't have recorded music, where the only time you saw that singer, like you purposely went to an opera was to see this diva. Yeah. And she brought in her own arias that made no sense. And Megan Thee Stallion was like, where my hotties at? Because they came to see her. And they happen to be at that live show. So I'm like, how we're consuming media. Yes, we can listen to it all the time, but it's also still ephemeral and it still exists in a vacuum. I just find it's a very interesting time in our history of how we listen to music. It's fascinating.
No, absolutely, 100%. And I mean, like, for instance, today I haven't really brought anything from the older time period of like when video game music sort of started to come up in the, probably in the late 80s, mid 80s, late 80s. And it's interesting how like there, and even think about it this way too, like your brothers, as an example, hired composers, or a composer. Did they hire you?
Yes.
Oh, okay. They hired you.
It's okay.
But like, if you
not for their first video game though. The first video game they did not. But then
my point being, like, there are people that have never heard your score, and it's because who knows what came out around the same time, and maybe people didn't play the game or whatever, and the people that played it heard it. But it's interesting how like there is a whole history of music that is just lost. Because like your music for that video, what's the video game's name? Just so that we
Stolen Realm.
That's right. Stolen Realm. It's on Steam. Not promotion, but point being that like there are people that have never heard your music, and so they automatically are like, well, what's the music from that game?
Right.
And it's interesting to be in a space where we have constant game releases that are scored, that have some degree of music in them, and it's impossible to cover all of them because whether they're trending, they're not popular, they just get lost in the shuffle. Like there's so many pieces of music that just don't exist, but because they're part of a consumptive product. It's very
exactly. It is very interesting to me. It's very interesting to me.
Anyway, let's keep going. So I wanted to play, because of your composition background, I actually wanted to play something pretty heavy. This is Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 2 is a horror game where you go into Silent Hill to find your missing wife. And figure out where she is. And it's obviously, as the game progresses, it starts to deform a bit, and the world kind of starts to fall apart. It's a place just covered in fog. It's you can't really see in front of you. This is the ambient track, actually, called, it's a part of the ambient music that goes into the Woodside apartment building. It's very unnerving, so I wanted to play you just a little bit. So I wanted to get your perspective on it.
Where I hug a pillow so I don't get scared.
Yeah, I mean, just a little gist. I often don't get to talk about ambient tracks a lot because they're not necessarily as sexy, but I think they're an important part of the, like, sort of the picture. But what kind of things come to mind when you listen to that?
Hearing your, I guess, scary music vibes. So I'm hearing a lot of like scraping against like suspended cymbals, like these metallic sounds. There's this drone at the top, which I think like would unnerve me. There's something about higher pitched drones, I think, for us humans, where the strings like,
yeah.
And it just will not let up. But also there's a lot of reverse playing. And so again, I'm a professor, and one of the classes I taught was electronic music history. And so you're talking about early electronic music where they're doing a lot of experimentation because they have this new like magnetic tape recorder since like 1945. So you can do things like record things, but also play them backwards. And for some reason, whenever I hear something playing backwards, that sound will never get old, like backwards speech, backwards, whatnot. But you'd think I'd get tired of it. I just love how things sound backwards. So I was thinking about some magnetic, what they call tape pieces or fixed format pieces. Specifically, there's a John Cage piece called Williams Mix, where he was able to get like this Louis and B.B. Barron, who had this studio in Greenwich Village. They also had a cousin who worked at the 3M company to get magnetic tape and just like these backwards sounds. But also the backwards sound also reminded me of the sound for the TARDIS for the BBC Radiophonic Workshop. Which if you guys ever want to recreate that sound, what they did was they took a key and they scraped the piano strings from the bottom of the piano of an upright piano, record that sound and made it play forwards and backwards because it's supposed to be like the TARDIS. So like, it's ironic that this ambient track kind of brought me joy because I'm like, oh, these sounds, I know where these sounds come from. I'm excited. Just, I know.
But
weird.
That's because, no, it's not weird. That's what you've immersed your entire life in. So it makes sense because you immediately, it's interesting. So me, singer, I go at it from an emotional state. And you, the composer, look at it from like the deconstruction of the parts because you studied it and understand it.
But also the emotional bit of like the drone, because like in my life, I think of what I like about music. Every time I go to a concert, every time I go to an opera, I think of like how I feel about it, which is emotions, right? I want to know why I dislike something or why I like something, or even further, like the macro sense of why would someone find this unnerving? So it's kind of like a feelings analysis or a psychology analysis of like how we react to music and sound. So like that high pitched strings, like that, the scratching of the chalk, like, or the nails on, like, why? And it just like, so it does make me, I don't know how long I could listen to it, to be honest, because of that high pitched thing. But I think what kept me through it is like hearing those backwards sounds and hearing it kind of like accelerate. I just love that sound. Like, I think I'll tell you one thing that as a composer, like the stereotype is true. I get a little obsessed with sounds and how sounds are made. And so I was able to like kind of ignore that high string.
Yeah.
If it was just that, I'd be like,
bruh. Well, the thing is, there's another track. Oh God, I always forget the name of it, where it has this radio static. The whole time. I mean, it's so effective, and I think that that's why Akira Yamaoka is such a genius, because like the thing about it is that like you're wandering around this apartment, it's all broken up, it looks like shit, there's stuff everywhere, clearly something's wrong. And so what's amazing is that we get this kind of industrial edge in it, and then further on there's actually like you can really hear like the rust. So I played this game last year, and they remade it from the original PlayStation 2 version, and it has remained with me. Honestly, like it's probably one of my favorite. It was like so uncomfortable, but because it's like a psychological horror game where yes, there are jump scares, but it's really about like you start to see like things that are in James's brain rather than like. So like certain characters represent certain things. We find out his wife was sick, and she's gone missing. And so it's like, we know he gets to a hospital at one point, and it's like, you know, there's this bit of like, why are the nurses kind of sexy, but they're also kind of fucked up? Like, what's going on there? Like, you know, and like there's this sickness element because of his wife, and it's just such an excellent game. Yeah, so it's tremendous.
I was gonna say, as much as I don't like jump scares, like now I'm tempted to play this game because that sounds fascinating to me.
At the very least,
I should,
because it's intelligent. I would hesitate to say it's fun. But it's one of these like deep psychological things where like there's a couple rock ballads actually. Oh, you know what? Fuck it. This is my show, damn it. Well,
it is your show.
There's a couple of rock ballads which I find really interesting. I'll play you the OG. Not that it really matters, but the OG is a little bit richer. This is the theme of Laura. And Laura is this little girl that kind of is always up your ass. Like she just kind of gets in the way. And she you're like, who's Laura? Why is Laura here? And Laura ends up representing like innocence and hope and possibility in the future. But listen to this again. So you have this ambient stuff, and then you've got this. So Silent Hill has this history of using sort of ballads in it, even though what we just heard also was this, super crunchy, gross, twisted track. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of glad they mix it up because the crunchiness again would it would unnerve me for sure. I mean, I'm sure the visuals and playing the game and trying to figure this out, I would need a oral palate cleanser. And also that tune we just listened to reminds me of the rock music in high school for me, where I was just oh, it's like your pseudo grunge, oh yeah, it's kind of a bop, but still has this twinge of nostalgia of darkness to it that I dig. But that is fascinating. That is so fascinating.
Yeah, it's a really cool musical palette. Really cool. So I've been playing this game lately called Xenoblade Chronicles. It's a really expansive game, deeply story locked. It's really, really beautiful, and the music is just chef's kiss. I don't think there's a bad track in the game. Well, I mean, there rarely is anyway, because video games, obviously, you wouldn't make a bad track on purpose, because the whole point is to get you to play the game and sell the game. But the soundtrack is really exceptional. So this is Engage the Enemy, and this track plays at pivotal moments in the plot, and it's just dope.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go. Okay.
Got it.
Yeah, let's go. Dude, that's kick-ass. What is this again? I'm writing this down.
This is Engage the Enemy.
Engage the Enemy?
From Xenoblade Chronicles with an X. Xenoblade, Exoblade. Xenoblade.
Exoblade. I could write music like that. It's so cool.
This is also like Yoko Shimomura. Like, she wrote the Kingdom Hearts soundtrack. Like, she's like one of the luminaries of game music. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because Kingdom Hearts, that's a cool soundtrack. There's so much I love about it because it's your hype music. I was actually working with some high schoolers where I wrote this piece called The Walk Up, and I was like trying to engage them, and I realized I was hitting up Gen Z face, but I get it. I was like stranger. So like I was like, what's a walk up tune? They're like, it's a hype song. You know, I was like, what are your hype songs? So like this would be a hype song for me personally. I liked the use of the guitar, the piano. So part of me is like, oh, I could even like play along with this, or even was there like an erhu? Like was there like a Chinese like stringed instrument in there? Like I don't know. It just sounded badass, and it sounded like you were just going to do the thing you needed to do. Mm-hmm. And then also there was a part of me that's like, it also sounded similar to music I'd hear at like when I go to a Korean restaurant, like in the 90s, like growing up in LA, you know, it sounds like it's not quite your background music of that, but like, I think with the piano and that orchestration, but it was just like really cool. And like, that was enjoyable.
What do you want? I can't even bibimbap.
Dude, I was just like, I would like extra bulgogi and some egg, please. Yeah, and the key changes were just, it was fun. Like, I was like, I wasn't expecting that, but then I was like, I should have, but I didn't. And it was just fun. I just loved it.
Why do you think, I also think that it was smart to have the second verse be different than the first verse by including the vocals and having it shift. Because otherwise, it's a nice tune, but like, I think it would have gotten kind of repetitive if you didn't. Mm-hmm. Why do you think, I know this about you, but the audience doesn't know, like, you're pretty cool and you like a bunch of stuff, but like, why do you think like some old heads really struggle with like classical old heads? Why do they struggle? Like, if I presented this to somebody, they'd probably be like, it's simple, it's basic.
I mean, my hot take answer is they suck, but I think about this all the time. So again, back to the whole, like, I think for me personally, why do I not like something, or why do I like something? And I think it is harder. The older we get, we tend to be more stuck in our ways. We are less likely to try new things. But I think a lot of it has to do with, if you're trained as a classical musician, I think there's this like, besides it being slightly cultish, but the idea of like, there is an art that's like better, and you're going to go through all this training, and you're going to work so hard, and you're going to keep working hard, and you're never going to be good enough. Or at least sometimes. It's not all of classical music is like that, but it's like, I feel like there's just been a robbing of joy. And ever since the pandemic, I've just been like trying to find joy in all places, honestly. And I think there is joy everywhere, but it's like, why do you want to like limit yourself to not hearing new things? Now, is this melody simple? Yes. But also, like, I can think of lots of music that's simple. And I will tell you, as a composer who tries to write simple music on occasion, it's the hardest thing. Because as you're mentioning, you can get tired of a simple melody so quickly. And so, like, composers have to find other ways to change it up, whether it's through instrumentation, whether it's through timbre, whether it's, like, taking the melody line and making it go backwards or flipping it. Like, it's so hard to write simple and elegant and beautiful and effective melodies. And so back to why are people so snobby about it? And I think they're afraid of change. They're afraid of seeing something that they think is lower. You know, they didn't study it. So in a way, and I'm also thinking about this as a professor, like, what do I teach my students? Because, you know, what I say is kind of like, it's more of like an opinion. It's not like the last word of things. Like, I think that being an educator means we're here to have a discourse, and that I teach adults for a reason, and that we all have our opinions. And as long as we can articulately say what we like or dislike about it, but to be like, they don't find this as good. I just think that argument is bullshit. And it also shows how intellectually lazy they are because they don't explain why. They just don't like it and they refuse to articulate why. And I would also argue that they can't because they just, to me, it's like a status thing. So that's my hot take on that. But I know that the older we get, the harder it is. So
I think it's interesting, because I think being able to understand why one dislikes something or understands it and appreciates it, it's very hard to appreciate why something is the way it is for the given nature of it, but then also not enjoy it. Like there's a couple tracks that I think work, but I really don't like. And it's like, I appreciate them because I know where they come from and I know what their intended purpose is. That doesn't mean, but that being said, I also think it's important that this is why I really think it's important to listen to music outside of the given context, because it's like, okay, cool, it works in context, but do you actually like that song if you actually sit down and listen to it? If you do, that's more than fine. But oftentimes there's this sort of like pushback where it's like, no, this is the best song ever made. But are you sure? I think it's really interesting how like we have these, Mahler, Strauss, all these great, these supposed like high art things, but then video game music and film music get siloed into this like separate funnel. And I hate this shit. I hate that it's like, oh, I mean, look, video game concerts are selling out everywhere. They've picked up hugely.
Huge.
But there's still like video game concerts. And that still kind of grinds my gears a little bit because it's like, yeah, it's cool. It's not, it should be integrated. And
I agree.
By not integrating it, it's like there are your seats over there. You sit there.
Yeah, that's a whole thing too, because what you're describing is video games as pops concerts,
right.
Film scores as pops concerts.
Right.
Why not integrate it? I was on the board of a very small community. Well, it's not a community orchestra, but it was like a small orchestra in the middle of Ohio. I cannot tell you when their most successful concerts was like, the Harry Potter ones or the Star Wars. And like, if they were smart, they would pair it up. But they were like, oh, we don't want to be a pops concert or like, and I'm like, who cares? Like, what is really the difference between a pops concert and a regular like subscription concert when you have to like go to the same concert hall and wear the same concert clothes and have the same concert etiquette? Who cares? I 100% agree with you. Why not program it together? I think there are some conductors and orchestra boards who will do this in the future because I think they're going to have to. They're gonna have to. Yeah. But I remember I had a friend who worked for the Cincinnati Symphony and would get calls over like, I don't know why you're playing that Stravinsky. And it's like, come on, man. Like, so I just, it'll be very interesting in the future because I feel like, because we're like millennials and like younger, how we're going to like change that, because we will change it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
It really doesn't. I mean, like in the next 10 years, I think things will shift too. And I think it's great that there's such a huge uptick in concerts that people clearly want to attend. And like the Distant Worlds video game, Final Fantasy concert goes all over the place every year.
It does.
Near, which I'll play you a track from, like they just re-upped for a whole second year of concerts. They just spent the entire year touring. And it's like, I mean, clearly they're not going to sell out anytime soon. And I do think that there is this like sort of not obsession, but like this, I think sometimes like the backdrop concert with the cue is sort of a detriment to it. 'Cause it's like, just play the music. I don't need to see the visuals. Like, just let us vibe. Like, I think my friend Kevin made a good point where he was like, unfortunately or I don't know if it was Kevin, but it doesn't matter. Unfortunately, they can get a little bit rigid because they lack a little bit of that fluidity that we get from like, music composed for other means.
Oh yeah.
Harry Potter has to follow the set track on the film.
And this past summer, I actually did the Los Angeles like film conducting seminar, right? Oh. And like I had to learn about flashes and punches. Mm-hmm. It's so hard. And it's like eventually, if you have really good studio musicians, and we're talking about recording only, we're not talking about the concert setting, you can turn off the click. Like if a composer knows about it, like, the musicians are like top notch, you can live a little bit in the music. But yeah, if you're doing a live show, they also dummy proof it so that you can't get off. And in fact, you could even argue that conductor isn't even needed because it's just so rigid where they have it because it's trying to do a live show. But you're right, it robs the liveness and the kind of like natural phrasing and everything.
What about a stretch? You know what I mean? You can't even stretch. There's no rubato.
You can't stretch it. So like it's a fascinating thing. So like, and in fact, this proves your argument of like having the music separate, because it's like the music can live on its own and it doesn't need a visual. It doesn't need like the hits and the flashes and punches that come across. That was the hardest thing. It was the hardest thing to conduct I was like, he's like, you're slowing down, and we're trying to do it without a metronome, without a click track. And I'm just like,
it's like dubbing anime. I've done a couple dubs. I can't even imagine actually doing like a lead on those, because I think like we really boost anime as like this like this like real hype like notoriety thing, but anime is probably, of all the things that I've done in voiceover, which isn't a ton, but it's probably the one that I enjoyed the least, because it's like D Japanese D say the line like the Japanese, and then you move on to the next line. Mm-hmm. Like you have to be really good at it, and you only learn by doing, but it's like it's sort of artistically devoid. Like obviously there are things about it that are artistic, of course, but like it's like just do the thing. It's very
I'm curious as a side, and we're not going to talk about this now, but the idea that like, so my husband is also he did his research for like Italian art, and so he's had friends who've like grown up with like Italian voiceover actors. And one funny story was like when one of his friends actually heard Sylvester Stallone's voice, and they're like, he sounds like a dog, because they had this like Tuscan like tenor anyway, but that's like you voiceovering anime, that sounds exactly it, where it's like somebody else already made those artistic decisions for you with the original like Japanese voice actor, so you have to conform to that because that's your gig, but like it stifles you a little bit.
Yeah, it's just interesting, and I'm glad you enjoyed this track because it's fun. Actually, I've never heard this track, but we were talking about, I don't remember, we were talking about riffing. I don't know, this track just came to mind. Yeah, this is squarely PlayStation 1 era, 90s, early thousands. This is from a game called Einhander, which sounds so Wagnerian, but it's a shoot 'em up, a shmup. They're called shmups. Okay. It's like think like Galaga. I don't know if you ever played that, like, or seen it. Okay, well, you're in a spaceship and you're shooting enemies and going up and down or forward and and stuff. Okay. Yeah, and so the tracks need to be a bit frenetic because of like the sheer visual overload that's happening. I've never heard this track really besides the first 10 seconds. I don't know why I decided that I wanted to play it, but I do. So we're going
to your show. Let's go.
This is Badlands from Einhander.
Yeah.
What?
Nice.
That was kind of wild, dude.
That was wild. These synth pad, the string pads doing these like crunchy chords.
Yeah.
But they didn't sound so crunchy because they were like up, but like it's not quite tonal, but it's like, ooh, something funky is going on.
Yeah.
And also I love the vocals are like, what were they saying? I was trying to like mouth it and then they switched it like engage or something like that.
I love that it has that juxtaposition. Adding the vocals like that adds this extra layer of like authority or almost like this existential, like deeply like almost like a religious conflict coupled with the mechanicization of like the sci-fi elements in it, you know?
Yeah, it also reminds me of like some like 90s techno, where you have like that sci-fi quote. And again, like not a musicologist or the ethnomusicologist. It also there's this very silly Flash cartoons from the early 2000s with the Strong Bad emails from homestarrunner.com, and they did. I love Strong Bad. I actually introduced my nephews to like Strong Bad because I was like, the system is down. Yes, the email, and then like having that like sci-fi quote, like the techno bit to it, and also of the techno. So I'll just bring it back to Stravinsky because I'm a nerd like that. But you're hearing that orchestra hit that you heard in like 90s hip hop, and that orchestra hit was sampled from Stravinsky's Firebird. So like having that like 90s like orchestra hit that you hear in hip hop, in techno, like that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. I'd be like, let's game.
Who needs a drug when you've got music like this? It's
I mean, actually.
How much does being Korean influence you in your like music? Do you think about like your culture, like on your mom's side at all when you're like composing, like about thinking about Korean composers and stuff? Yeah,
I do now. I would say that growing up, since my dad's white, I've always had this dichotomy where like, how Korean am I? Like how much of me is Korean? How much is not Korean? How much is white? The dual identity. I've had lots of Asian friends. We talk about this. And I think growing up, we figure out like which characteristics are from which parent. When we're talking about music and influences, I realized that yes, I was always fascinated by the piano, but definitely my mom was like, oh yeah, she's getting piano lessons. And she also tried to like get me to take violin lessons too. But then I realized I have to practice for both instruments, and practicing an instrument was not my forte. I was like, I said, Mom, I'm done practicing violin. She's like, great, you get to practice piano now and you can't play with your friends. And I'm like, no, thank you. So I quit the violin. My joke is that I'm only half Korean, so therefore I'm only going to play one of these instruments. And once my mom took me and the family to this Korean expo in 1992, I think, in LA. Like we drove to downtown LA, and I remember hearing like a whole bunch of drumming. And I was like, Dad, I'm hearing a whole bunch of drumming. He's like, that's Korean music. And so I saw like, the dancers, the Sangumul dancers and everything like that. So fast forward to today, because I'm only half, and because I don't have a Korean sounding last name, and I only know how to say hello and goodbye and various food words in Korean. I was like, I never thought I was Korean enough to incorporate Korean influences in my music until like a few years ago, where I was just like, there have been other composers like white men who like incorporated Aryang, and that's fine. And they're good pieces of music. So I was like, I'm Korean enough, whatever. So like, I was just always afraid of appropriating, even though that is my culture, even though I definitely didn't play with my friends as much. I definitely didn't grow up with a video game system because my mom was like, you're practicing piano. That's your chore. And so now I see piano practicing as a chore. But there's definitely like Koreanness in me. And so like that track that 2 tracks ago that we heard, I was just like, this sounds like my childhood in a weird way. Or like, I've also had a lot of like Korean friends who like study composition with me, or like even like what is even Koreanness. So there's this composer In Sik Chin who's Korean, but she's lived in Germany, and to me like, and she also studied with Ligeti. So like Koreanness is like however like we define it, like with our own specific experiences. So it wasn't until recently where I'm like, I'm going to use those drum patterns. They sound really cool. And then me also going to YouTube and just like watching over and over again how these Korean drum patterns work. Because again, not an ethnomusicologist, looking at a couple of books, like, but just more of embracing it because like I grew up with that music on the side. But what is also Korean too is like the deep respect and also fascination with Western music. So again, like there is a thing with Koreans where is the stereotype, of course I'm a Korean woman, I play piano. Like You know what I'm saying? It's just something about Western music that is so influential in East Asia. So we're thinking Suzuki method. We're thinking about like the globalization of like all this music, and we have like top like Asian players. So that said, because my mom was like, you're going to listen to classical music only, I was like, that's also Korean. Because even though it's like Mozart, Beethoven, Haydn, I thought that all composers are dead and there was like no living composers and all the music has already been written because like I played piano. That is also Korean culture, if you could believe it. So like I would say that has like influenced my music, like kind of like what I listened to. So like when I was in middle school, I was like, I'm going to listen to pop music because my mom won't let me, and like trying to listen to those things, or like trying to sneak in video games, like trying to play Super Mario Brothers, only getting up to level 3 because you couldn't save your game. And I had to like, Mom, can I go over to my friend's house? I was like, could you practice your piano? Like, you know, those things. So now I'm okay with like talking about my Koreanness, even though like people, they might not see me as Korean, but like, dude, I have a therapist on retainer because my mom's Korean and I don't know what else, you know, and that guilt of like not practicing or like even going into classical music, or like, you know, we were talking earlier about like what is deemed as better music, you know, like, what can I say? But that's a part of who I am. But I also like all different types of music. Yeah, I would say that there are different cultural influences, but now I am more keen to like, well, what is happening? How are my Korean colleagues writing music? How is music being produced? Like the video games. Also, like, I couldn't believe this. Like watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and I've heard of K-pop Demon Hunters, but then when I saw like them perform it live, it was the most Korean thing I've ever seen in my life. And I felt so much pride and joy. And I'm like, the visuals are so Korean. They're so Korean. Anyways, I don't know if that answers your question, but
it does. Well, the reason I bring it up is because I brought 2 tracks from Korean composers from Korean games that are developed in Korea.
This will be great.
Yeah, and so this first one is from a game called Stellar Blade, and this track is called Democrawler. here's the second bass. Yeah. It's out of nowhere. This is a random electro beat.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Dude, that was fun. I was thinking again of one thing I've noticed about Korean culture is like they take some. They're not really. Oh, I hope Koreans don't get mad at me. Don't at me, but they're not known for originating something, but they're known for perfecting it. Like I'm thinking of like boy bands, skincare, porcelain. Actually, like the Chinese invented porcelain, and then the Chinese scholars later on were like, yeah, we invented it, but the Koreans do it the best. Like we're just known as like one-upping you as we do. Again, back to the whole like growing up listening to Western music because that's the thing I was supposed to do. Like you could tell they've totally listened to that. But also this vibe is giving me very much like 1960s James Bond, like crooner, but with virtuosity, like vocal virtuosity. Like when my eyebrows went, I was like, is she singing a high B flat? Like,
yeah, so this is Purnell, and she actually has a YouTube channel, and she's incredible, and she's actually a jazz singer by trade, but they also
that makes sense.
Usually commission her with this and this other game that they have, Nikke, Goddess of Victory. She actually ends up doing a lot of operatic stuff, so she ends up having this really interesting fusion where it's not necessarily legitimate opera singing, but it doesn't really matter because of the way that she decides to lift and push and like scoop up to the top. Like it's kind of dirty and it works really well because it's just such a fascinating sort of genre blend that Purnell does. It's really cool.
Yeah, because you're right. It's not opera, but at the same time, look, she's being mic'd. She's being recorded. She doesn't have to carry her voice across an orchestra, across a hall. But she's a crooner. And there's just something that I love about crooners, right? With the phrasing and everything like that. And so I was hearing that crooning. She still hits the notes. She's not pitchy. Do you know what I'm saying? So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And so I'm loving that you're saying it's a fusion style because I was like, it's not operatic. But some of the timbre is, but I'm hearing it more as like phrasing, if that makes sense. And like, yeah, it could be dirty to scoop, but it's like, who cares? Again, it's like the style, especially when you have like that like the drum beats in the background, which is like, to me, I can't describe it, but to me, that seems like so Korean of like, we're gonna have this like vibe. Again, it's giving me like, oh yeah, they don't really play this music in like the Korean supermarkets, but like, do you know what I'm saying? It's like, oh yeah, like I'm getting my nails done, or like, you know, like certain Korean spaces that would have this music to it. But you can tell there's a love and a respect for Western music, classical music that goes in that, but also a love for like American jazz of the crooning, like the singing tradition. It just seems like a lot of fun, and like, I can hear that. I can hear that it, like the love of these different like cultures that they had growing up.
Yeah, no, it's definitely. I mean, the whole soundtrack is absolutely banging. It didn't win soundtrack of the year that year, but it really should have. It was so so insanely good. Now to pivot over to their other IP, so it's the same company, Shift Up, but for something totally different. Just to give you a taste. This is Alive from Goddess of Victory, Nikke. That is dirty, Jesus. I've never heard this track before.
Yo. Nice.
Yeah. That's so nasty. That's crazy. I love the crunch in that. Holy shit.
Oh my God. Somebody's been listening to Skrillex, which is fine, but also with the chord progressions that you would hear in like Korean pop music, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Like I'm out of practice with like my Roman numerals and hearing like the different stuff. But I was like, oh, I'm hearing it. But also Skrillex, but also the wobble bass where they like drop the bass.
Yeah.
And then you have your samples. That is wild and glitchy.
I love when it glitches. Well, because
Me
it always
too.
catches you off guard, you know? It's just like, sometimes you just put on a piece of music and it's like, you just can't fucking help but just jam out, like just love it. You know what I mean? Like,
Right?
That to me is like a perfect track.
I loved it so much. In all seriousness, so again, I mentioned that I grew up listening to John Williams music. I didn't kind of correlate that a conductor and a composer could be the same person. They're not always. And so on PBS, John Williams is conducting the Boston Pops. And I was like, oh, this music is new. What is this? My dad's like, well, he's a composer of this music. And I didn't realize I was listening to film scores. Because like, John Williams is such a top-notch composer, such a top-notch orchestrator. But when I went to my freshman year of college, I had a composer as my professor who I think they wanted to get into the industry. And their dad was working in film. They were able to make money in grad school by scoring Lexus commercials and would be so like chagrined that, oh, it's just 3 chords and I'm doing this, but I'm getting thousands of dollars checks. And this person basically was like, John Williams steals. He steals from Bartok. He steals from Stravinsky. And sadly, because I was an impressionable 18-year-old, I was like, oh, that's cheating. That sucks. And so for like a couple of years, it's like John Williams sucks as a composer. And I'm sad. I'm sad I thought that, because I was like, no, there's something about studying scores. There's something about introducing music, different types of music to the masses. There's something to be said about that. So like flip that story on its head. I was introducing my orchestration students to more of like your standard orchestra rep. And I'd be like, hey, have you heard Ravel's Bolero? And I was like, all right, let's pull up your man Dudamel, because Dudamel is now the conductor for the New York Phil, like for the upcoming season. Also, Dudamel looks like my students, like with the hair and everything. So, and they're like, okay. And they're just like, I love this. Who knew that they would like Brahms? But my favorite was when I was like, all right, it's the end of semester. Let's listen to some Holst. Let's listen to the planets.
Oh, Jupiter.
Right? Yeah, Jupiter, the king of Jolley. That's what I know of Jupiter. But I purposely played the Mars, and I said, you guys, I just went to New York Phil with Susan Melke conducting planets. And my husband said, we need to do a paternity test for John Williams to see if Holst is his father. And they're like, okay, that's funny. That's funny, professor. But then I play Mars, and this one kid's like, oh my God. That's like the scene in Star Wars. I'm like, yeah, but like, isn't that amazing? Right? Isn't that great? I actually, and they're like, I got to tell my friends in like this Star Wars chat. I'm like, they probably already know, but go ahead and put it on the Discord. That's fine. Yeah. But like, what's wrong with that? That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Like, we're sharing music and we're sharing influences. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. And so, and I have so many students who listen to video game soundtracks and play video games, and that's the reason why they want to start writing music themselves.
You know what's crazy?
Like, that's beautiful.
Absolutely, 1000%. There's a community of a particular game that really dislikes me because I started having stronger opinions about music and expressing that. There's a whole community that has, well, I mean, they've turned to insults and a whole bunch of other stuff because, well, they're in their 20s, and so on the internet, they don't need to do that. But what I find interesting is that they're so passionate about their music that at times I've mentioned that some pieces are generic or shallow, not necessarily like, I'm not trying to point it, but it's amazing how passionate they are about the music that they actually like think that I'm a piece of shit for which I think is too far, but like it's crazy how they're so passionate. There's this one guy on Twitter that's like, oh, I was having such a good day, but now I've discovered that this certain content creator is going to be reacting to this particular song, and now my day is ruined. And I'm like, I'll go look at their profile, and it's like they like are like orchestrating it, and it's like clearly they're passionate about a piece of music. So when someone says that it sounds generic, that then it's like an offense to them. But I actually love, and this is the thing that people don't understand about me, is like, I don't care if by all means, I'm allowed to celebrate my opinion just as much as you're allowed to celebrate yours without me calling you a shithead or asshole or whatever that you choose to do, like discrediting all of my years of study. But I think it's really interesting and beautiful, like to your point about the Star Wars thing, how passionate young people can be. Young people, as if we're like not young, but you know what I mean, like how passionate people can become, and we don't need it to be a gateway to Mahler or to Strauss.
I know,
it's like,
right?
Let them enjoy it, man. Like,
exactly.
Who gives a shit?
Exactly. And like, I don't want to rob people of their joy. I agree with you. I've noticed that my students or people in their 20s, they tend to take things a little bit more personally, and that's fine. That's where they're at. I'm sure I did. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure. You know what I'm saying? Like, but yeah, just like find what you like, and like you're entitled to your opinion. It's America, as I see it. So like, damn straight. It's totally fine.
So you mentioned Mars, and actually, so speaking of that, there's this, I wasn't going to show this, but just for the sake of it, Bloodborne is one of my favorite video games. It's like Cthulhian, like Gothic, like it starts out as this beautiful, like, Victorian Gothic sort of, broody thing. And then it slowly becomes this cosmic horror. And there's this one particular track called Living Failures, which is, these are, I don't fully remember all the details because it's been a minute since I played, but essentially they are experiments gone wrong. Also, no one judged Jen if she's looking at the TV because currently she is big in her space life. And that's the last track I'm going to play you. What's the matter? What's happening?
I was going to say that the Apollo record doesn't happen until 35 minutes later, so you're good.
Okay.
So I'm gonna jam out. So the space sound that I just heard.
I was gonna say, because it's okay if she's looking up, it's because she's watching a live stream of the moon,
of the Artemis 2 mission.
the Artemis 2 mission, which
because I'm begging out on
it's an important moment in history. All right, so here's Living Failures. I love that. So does that sound like
It does, but a couple things. Marco, doesn't singing just make everything better? Like the addition of the choir, I just was like, yeah, let's make it more epic.
Yeah.
So for your fans who are watching and aren't familiar with Mars, the Bringer of War, there's no choir in that. There's choir for Uranus, which will always make me crack up. I'm sorry, I'm a child. But the choir, but also what I liked about this track, yes, it sounds like Mars, like the ding 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 ding, but not in 5, 4, it's in 4. And like the trombones, I was thinking, here are the things I thought. My trombone friends would just love playing this track. They would love it so hard. All my brass friends. Number 2, I actually liked the beginning because there was like the sense of space. to it, right? That I thought was just so original. You don't really have a lot of pieces that in all of music and even like pop music where it just like allows for space to happen. In music, it's like we have to fill up the space with something. We have to make sure it's like max sound all the time. But I love that it allowed for space. And then you hear the dee, right? And so I was like, yes, somebody who's like taking a risk actually in our listening of like allowing this like uneasy space to happen, but it was great that they had it before the epicness where it just got bigger and bigger and built and you had that epic choir. It did sound like Mars, but I actually, another thing I was thinking when I was listening to it is like, I recently copied Mars in one of my pieces. Like I wanted to write a piece. I wrote a wind ensemble piece for the US Navy Band about this naval. Yeah, it's nuts. It was going to be premiered in Korea. And it was going to be my first time to Korea ever. It was actually my second time. That's a whole other story. But I was writing it for a Korean audience. And so it was basically based on their naval officer, Lee Sun-shin, who's like known historically. If you play the game Civilization, you can earn him as a naval officer. And all Koreans have to know about him. And I wanted that epicness for this historical figure. So I did two things. I copied a Beethoven chord because I was thinking like, let's think of like Beethoven, but also I was stealing some chords or like textures from Mars. So like, it's as okay. As one does. So I'm just like, yeah, did that sound like Mars to me? Yes. Did it evoke feelings though that made me happy? Also, yes. Like, why not? I'm only so much of a badass. Sometimes I need to steal from Mars. It's okay. Like,
how dare you steal from Holst? You want to write a strongly worded letter to the estate. There's something about that piece, I think, too, that really encompasses, like, you really do get the sense of like this otherworldly sort of invoking or invitation, especially with the chorus, of course, but there's just such a richness. And I love that it's just a constant build. And even when it resets into that second portion of it, where they call down, I believe, this like massive beam of light. I can't remember all the details, but it just feels like it's almost claustrophobic, even though it's expansive at the same time. I love that. So, cool. We've listened to a bunch of tracks. Obviously, you're an open-minded person. Obviously, like, I knew it was going to be like this, but like, what have you sort of taken away from this? That
I want to just like listen to video game soundtracks more often. And that I don't know if it's like weird Korean guilt, but like, there's a part of me that's like, I always thought like, oh, well, video game music is meant to be for the video games, but there's actually value, as you've taught me through this whole session, just like listening to this and like exploring this other world. And now I have like a treasure trove of like hype songs, but also like creepy sounds, kind of something that will like add to my composer playbook, actually. So who knows if I'll like start stealing effects from video game music, because like, why not? It's part of like the sound library that I have in my head that I would just love to visit and explore more and enjoy for music's sake only. I think that's really special.
There's a tendency for people to only want hype music or the most popular music or music that really is like always a banger, or like it sucks that like with my strategist we'll talk and I'll be like, ooh, I should do a video on happy music, and he's like, happy music's no one's gonna watch the video. And I'm like, but and I mean, not that it matters, right? Because thankfully this series is now like sort of the cornerstone of the channel. I can kind of do whatever I want now, but which is nice. There's something to be said for the fact that like boss music will always get 1 billion views. Main themes always get 1 billion views, and it's like, it sucks that you have to sort of play to the algorithm and play to like. What I like about this particular episode with you is that we were able to play things that, yes, I mean, some were super popular, and I think everybody will enjoy these tracks. But I'll frequently get comments that are like, these tracks sucked, or like that. It's like, it's not really the point. The point is not about whether or not Jen reacts to your favorite music. The point is to like sit down, have a conversation about music, and maybe you gain something, or maybe you get some reinforcement about something you like, or maybe you get reinforcement about something you don't like. It's very interesting. Like, I had an episode with Stephen White, a fantastic conductor. He's actually like a really open-minded, super opera classical fan. He was like, I don't like that, but I get it. And he'll point out why he didn't like it and stuff, which I love. But, he was like, I don't like this. And then I had a lot of comments that were like, oh my God, I don't like this either. Finally, someone says it. This is how I felt. And it's like, cool, because that's the beauty of music, that I think sometimes if we only listen to bangers or only listen to things that like we like.
Oh, I know. I actually, what I tell, it's so funny because like, as my job, I actually go to a lot of concerts and I go to a lot of new music concerts. I'm here to support my friends, my colleagues. Also, I'm curious. I'm curious what something will sound like. And like 80 to 90%, I don't like what I hear. I'm sorry, I just don't. But it's actually teaches me a lot. I learn about myself. I learn how to write the music I want to write, how to communicate in the way I like. And I think there's some value in it. And I never see it as a waste of time, actually, even though our canvas, our medium is time for music, right? Yeah. I'm just like, you know what? I'm glad I went to a live show, or I'm glad I experienced this for myself. I'm glad that I'm able to form my own opinion. I'm glad I'm able to learn something, or I'm glad I'm able to like respect something. So like, I actually just saw Tristan and Isolde for the first time ever. I may have fallen asleep during some parts because it's a long ass opera. It's fine.
So
but like it's not for me musically, but I like respect it, and I also found value in some of the staging decisions. Also, some of the staging decisions I was like, I don't understand, but also like I'm glad I went. And I've learned something and I respect it. Like, I get why like the film scores of like the early 20th century were like totally influenced by Wagner, and like the shows and the epicness of it. And even like stories of video games are like influenced by this. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's all good.
I mean, even like a show like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure that I just started watching, which is absurd. Like that show is so Wagnerian in its scope. And like, I'm like, oh yeah, this is clearly in some way is clearly influenced by Wagner, you know? I mean, thank you so much. Do you feel like you learned something today?
Yes.
So finally, after all these years, now I'm the teacher, sucker.
I've learned so much from your channel. Like I didn't know that there was like a bel canto opera in one of the Final Fantasies.
Oh yes.
I didn't know that until I saw your channel, and I like told my students, I'm like, guys, you need to like see this. Like and what I love about your channel is like what I thought this whole time is that like I know when I first started playing video games like in the 80s at my friend's house, it was just, you know, like these like Nintendo hard games, right? And they're fun and musically they're fun, but like there's a level of depth in so much that they're video games that are artful and have an experience, and I'm here for that. And thank you for sharing that with your channel.
You're welcome. And thank you for supporting me on patreon.com/my. No, thank you, Jen, of course. Of course. Always, I appreciate you so much. And we've been friends for years. And thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoy this. Definitely let me know if you want Jen to come back. Doesn't matter because she is anyway. And whether she wants to or not, apparently. We'll see you all later. Bye.